In California, we cherish our National Guard. They're the first there to help out during earthquakes and floods and fires. We have a very special bond of trust with the National Guard. And so to see it misused this way, to potentially erode that trust, we also venerate the Marines, but to call in the Marines for no other reason, I think, than to add fuel to the fire is a terrible abuse of the military.
So, Senator, let me ask you about that. President Trump's decision to deploy the National Guard, the Marines, despite the fact that California Governor Gavin Newsom said he did not need that, did not want that. President Trump said the city would have, quote, burned to the ground without his aid. Do you think local officials had that situation under control?
Yes, I do. And, let's call the president's statement what it is, and that's just a flat-out lie. The idea that Los Angeles would have burnt to the ground, it's absurd. These demonstrations were taking place in a multi-block area in a city that is 500 square miles. Our police and our sheriff's office and our highway patrol are more than capable of dealing with this.
Trump is back in the spotlight. He dismissed climate science because it didn't rain, sent the Marines to L.A., and couldn't even tolerate a senator. Is this real? Unfortunately, yes. Details in the video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and let's meet in the comments. Someone explain to me, what is Trump up to? Seriously, Los Angeles was going to burn? Come on. You're calling in the Marines because there are protests in a few blocks of a 500 square mile city? What is this, Call of Duty Ego Edition? The governor of California said, "We don't want it, we don't need it." But of course, Trump isn't listening. No, this guy tried to use the military as an internal security force during his first term too. At least back then, there were a few people who said, "Mr. President, this is ridiculous." Now? Just yes men like Stephen Miller and Kristi Noem, a full-fledged sycophant army.
So we're going to Canada. Last night was a tremendous success with a fantastic audience. It was supposed to rain. They gave it a 100% chance of rain, and it didn't rain at all. It was beautiful. And so I asked if they gave it 100% chance, right? 100% it was going to rain like crazy, and it didn't rain at all. How did they predict 100 years out and 50 years out or 200 years out? They didn't do too well, the weather people, last night, but it was beautiful.
Are you and Prime Minister Netanyahu on the same page concerning how to deal with Iran?
Well, we get along very well, and I will tell you that I think we have great respect for each other.
Can you give us a solution?
Go ahead, what?
Let's not for him. Mr. President, can you give us a sense of what escalate the situation between Iran and Israel?
Well, I hope there's going to be a deal. I think it's time for a deal, and we'll see what happens. But sometimes they have to fight it out, but we're going to see what happens. I think there's a good chance there'll be a deal. What? So the protesters, if we didn't have the National Guard on call and ready, they would rip Los Angeles apart. They come and they check and they say, is the National Guard going to be there? And if the National Guard's being there, they don't even show up.
Have you asked Israel to pause their airstrikes into Iran?
Well, I don't want to say that.
Mr. President, do you expect to have some trade deals announced at the G7 summit coming up?
Look, we have our trade deals. All we have to do is send a letter. This is what you're going to have to pay. But I think we'll have a few new trade deals, yeah.
Will the U.S. support the defense of Israel? Will the U.S. continue to support Israel in its defense?
We do, yeah. Thank you.
Here we are again with another one of Trump's brilliant speeches, folks. So look, the guy comes out and says, they said it would rain 100%, but it didn't. And from there, he tries to undermine climate science. Seriously, he's throwing 200 years of scientific projections in the trash because the weather forecast was wrong. This guy once tried to negotiate climate agreements with world leaders. Can you believe it? And then he jumps from one topic to another so quickly. From Canada to Netanyahu, then to Iran, the G7, and then back to Los Angeles. It's filled with cliches, but the content? Zero. Pure word salad.
But as you're hearing more and more stories of undocumented, long-term residents of the United States who are otherwise law-abiding, working hard, paying taxes, raising families, and frankly, working in jobs that under the first Trump administration, when the COVID pandemic hit, were deemed essential. Right? Workers in restaurants, in agricultural fields, in healthcare, construction, et cetera. That's who's being targeted now, and that's why there's so much fear and terror in communities, not just in Los Angeles, but throughout the country.
I did note it was interesting to see in the House, the Republican Hispanic Conference put forth a letter asking for a breakdown of how many criminals were among those actually deported.
And that was one of the key questions they had for the secretary. Of course, she had no data, had no answer, promised to follow up. I hope. Yeah. We'll see. And I also want to be clear about this, because when I had the audacity to try to ask a question as a senator of a cabinet secretary. That's what happened. And you saw the response. Everybody's seen the video. It wasn't about me.
So we've reached a point where even a U.S. senator is treated as a threat when he dares to ask a question. Just think about it. Immigrants who have been living in this country for years, paying taxes, and whom we declared essential workers during the pandemic are being targeted. But a senator who wants to defend their rights? He is silenced. And this happened right in front of the cameras. Now imagine what's happening where there are no cameras. For this administration, it's not about security, it's about control. They love to show off their power and instill fear. Democratic debate? Forget it.
Now is former Defense Intel Agency officer Rebecca Koffler. Rebecca, what are your thoughts tonight on the incredible symbolism and the messaging that we saw here tonight from the Commander-in-Chief on the Army's 250th birthday?
I am so excited, Emily and Lucas Tomlinson. Everybody, this is incredible. Finally, the United States is back. I want to really thank all of our Army, Navy, and Air Force officers who have been sacrificing their lives.
Rebecca Koffler is on stage again, and guess what? She can't stop praising Trump. So it's the Army's 250th anniversary celebration, which is great, a historic moment. But what are we hearing? Finally, the United States is back. Back? Back from where? She talks as if the country had been ruled by aliens for the past 8 years. She mentioned the administrative state. What's that got to do with anything? For this Trump crew, everything is either the deep state or the administrative state. Reality? Who needs it? These America First slogans are starting to sound like a broken record, but there are still people clapping along. What's that, sir? Foreign wars are over? Really? In which universe? No matter how much they try to cover up the truth, we will continue to speak out, question, and expose. Remember, silence makes us ordinary. So subscribe, and share. Because the more we amplify this voice, the stronger we are.